Is there a KE8 Hotel Zulu Zulu, Ken Edmonds? Dropped a ticket. All right.
Ken's not here?
No Ken. All right. I'm Steve Hicks with Flex Radio, N5AC, and I'm going to talk briefly about multiflex, which is a technology we've introduced this year for allowing multiple operators to use a radio. So the broad concept behind multiflex is that for most radios, you have a radio and you have one person that uses that radio. Multiflex allows you to have multiple operators using the same radio. So there's a number of different ways you can do this, and kind of get into how this works and how it's built. So you can connect any two clients to one radio. For us, a client is pretty much anything. It could be a computer on the internet. It could be one of our Maestros. It could be a iPad, an iPhone, a Raspberry Pi, whatever you want. There's a lot of situations under which this would help you reduce the cost of your station if you wanted to have multiple operators in the station. That's not going to work for every situation, but I'll show you some that will. Helps with remote operation, and it gives some really unique contesting capabilities that I think probably are not immediately obvious that I'd like to talk about. So for us, it could be any kind of two clients. This on the bottom is our Maestro, and the top's an iPad, but it could be an iPhone or a Mac or a PC or whatever else. Because we have integrated in our radio also the ability to connect over the internet, you could have one of these that's local and one that's remote. So if you think about a situation where you'd like to operate your radio remotely, you might also like to operate it locally. So let's say you're running a contest and you got a buddy that wants to run the contest with you and he's remote, you could contest together. Or you could use two PCs to do that. We also have a radio that has a couple radios that have the front panel with a touchscreen on it, and you could use that as well as a PC setting beside it. So you might want to do this if you wanted to monitor a couple of bands and operate on your radio, as well as show the band conditions on a couple other bands. Okay, so how does this work? What's the technology behind this? The main thing that we've done to our radios, we added a virtualization layer, and we changed the API some to support this. So any of you that are currently writing to our radio API, you can go look at, we have a wiki online that shows what that is. You can also send us a note, and we'll provide you some of the details on the changes. But the primary thing here is that we virtualize the radio for each of the clients. So what does that mean, and why would you do that? If you look at the way most people use their radio today, they'll have a VFOA and a VFOB, and if you're going to use digital modes, let's say you use FT8, you're going to want to connect to VFOA and VFOB, and you have decoding programs that are expecting sound cards for each of those. The virtualization layer makes it look like two separate radios, each of which have their own VFOA, VFOB, and digital sound ports, all that kind of stuff. So that's the primary purpose of the virtualization layer. The other thing that we've done in our client, which you can do in any software that you want to write to it, is we have what's called a station. And the purpose of the station is, if you think about an installation where you have a radio, but you have two guys that are operating it sitting next to each other, the station is the guy sitting in front of the computer. So let's take a multi-single contest station where you have one radio, but you have two guys sitting there. You might call one station Station A and one station Station B, or the left station, the right station, whatever. And so there's a new indicator on our software that shows what the station name is, and it shows up either in the PC, which I had before, or in the Maestro that you see here. And you can change these to whatever you want. So there's some other things that are that you have to worry about when you do this kind of virtualization layer. One of them is that if you plug a microphone into the radio and you press PTT, and you got two guys sitting there, each of which has his own station, who's trying to transmit? So there is a facility in the radio that allows you to specify which one of the two stations actually might plug things directly into the radio, so you know that. And that way, if guy A is on 20 meters and guy B is on 40 meters, and you've told it which one of those is the PTT, when you transmit, you know which band you're going to transmit on. So this is what that dialog box looks like in Windows, and you just make a selection of which station that is, and this is what the dialog box looks like in a Maestro. So again, if you're operating on the API, all this stuff is in there and you can code that up. So the same sort of situation if you're going to run a digital mode. Let's say you've got two separate computers, each of which is running in a RTTY contest. So you've got N1MM running that you've connected over CAT, and you have multiple decoders. Let's say you have RTTY decoders, that sort of thing. You've got to know which one of the Maestros, if you have a Maestro talking to the computer, connects to it as well. And so it's the same sort of thing with CAT and DAX. For each of these, you have to select which station it's connected to. So if you picture the same sort of deal, you got computer A and computer B for the stations. The guy on computer A, his station will have a name, and he'll have to select that in both CAT as well as DAX when he goes to do any sort of CAT or DAX operation for control of the radio, audio, any of those kind of things. And that's what this dialog box looks like here. There's a couple selections. You pick the one that you want. Here's a picture of our DAX client, same sort of thing here, and we've done the exact same thing in the API to support this. There's another interesting thing, which if you think about one radio, you might have multiple receivers in that radio, but you only got one transmitter. So how do you know who's transmitting and what's going on there? We have a transmit indicator in our software. This also comes out over the API, so you know who's transmitting. But for our software, we light a bright red TX box whenever it's you that's transmitting. And when it's your partner that's transmitting or somebody else on the radio, you get a white filled-in box. And so this helps you if you're alternating back and forth. Lots of reasons you'd want to do this. If you're operating in a contest, and let's say you're the run station, the guy sitting next to you is the multiplier station, the run station sitting there transmitting, the multiplier guy gets an indication for when he's transmitting, and then when he stops, the multiplier guy can jump in and make a multiplier contact. Another example would be, let's say you're at home and you have two guys that happen to want to chase FT8 signals using the same radio. FT8 or even FT4, which is coming out, the pace is pretty quick. You might not be able to run it on two bands at the same time, but with one radio, you can set the transmit interval up to be opposite. So there's a setting in JTX and WSJTX that allow you to set up which time slot you're transmitting in. So guy in station A might transmit in time slot A, which might be 15 and 45 seconds after the minute, and guy B might transmit at 30 seconds and 0 seconds after the minute, and so they would alternate back and forth. If you have two separate antennas, you can set this up and run two antennas. Both of you can sit there and work FT8 or FT4 contacts back and forth in ping pong, and this will tell you who's transmitting when you're watching it. This is what that looks like in the Maestro. Okay, so what could you do with this? What are the benefits of having something like this, and why would you want to do it? One is you could let a friend or family member use your radio or tower. So I know nobody in here has kids that are hams that would be interested in doing that. I do, so that's kind of a neat idea. You could tell your child that happens to be away at college or in another room of the house or anything, they can just log into your radio and use it at the same time you're using it. They could tune around and use it. This could also be over the internet. So let's say that you have kids or grandkids that are in another place in the United States. You could say, hey, log into my radio, tune around, see what you want to see, listen to broadcasts, whatever you want to do. You can do that over the internet at the same time you're using it. Okay, I think I've talked about most of this. Another example, I had a ham that's a customer of ours say that he has a parent that's in a retirement community that no longer has access to his radio and tower. So he loaned his dad his Maestro and allows him to log into his radio and use it remotely. So that's another neat application. Okay, so this is kind of a unique application of this technology, which is multi-single contesting. How many people in here have run a contest before? Oh, just a few. Okay, well, I won't spend a lot of time talking about this, but the idea is that if you look at contesting in general, most people who contest are single-op contesters and not multi-op. What this allows you to do is invite a friend over. All he has to use is a computer or a Maestro or something else to sit with you in ham. Normally, if you wanted to invite a friend over to contest, you've got to set up a complete other station, multiple antennas, multiple radios, antenna switches. It's a complicated mess, and this really reduces that down to just another client device. Another cool application is a ham club. So if you have a ham club, you could put a radio at the club station and then have Maestros, or even allow people to log in through a PC. So you could say, our ham club is available these times a day. Download the Smart SDR software. You can write your own client, use the Mac client, use an iPhone, use an iPad, and connect to that radio anytime you want and access it. So today there aren't a lot of ham clubs that have their own unique station, primarily because the members have to drive to the station to use it. But this makes that a lot easier. You could find a plot of land, set up a radio, and run software like this, and the hams can log in remotely and use the station, which is kind of a neat deal. Another thing is, if you have a radio of your own, you can actually log into the club station to check if you've got a problem. So let's say that suddenly your antenna seems like it's not receiving signals as well. Is the band dead? Do you have a local noise problem? Or did you break a piece of coax or lose an element or something in your antenna? You can log into the ham station while you got your station right there next to it and check it out and see whether or not there's something that's different. Maybe you've got a local source of noise that you see on your radio and you want to know, is that in my immediate neighborhood, or is it a broadband source of noise that's all over the environment in the city that I'm in? You can log into the remote station and see, does the other station see it? This is an example video. Let's see, I bet I could make this play on the audio if it's working. Let's see. So this is that exactly happening. So the station on the right has a lot of noise, but he actually hears the guy that's talking a lot better than one on the left. So it provided a unique way to see what's going on. So you can compare and contrast and see what's going on. In this case, this is 2 instances of our software running on one PC connected to 2 different radios. One of them is in this case, Atlanta, and one of them is in Austin. Another unique thing you can do with this is you can have multiple displays running. So lots of applications for this. One might be that you want to operate looking at something right in front of you, but you have a big monitor in your shack for people that come in and want to see what's going on. Well, you can run both of those and show what's going on the other monitor. You'd put zoomed out looking at all the bands, showing what's going on. Another example might be if you have a Maestro you want to use locally to connect and operate, but you want to show band conditions on other bands. You could bring this up and show it. All right. Wow, that was quick. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to ask Skydie to come back up here, and then we'll take questions about any of the topics that we talked about, or anything else that y'all want to ask about. Okay, questions.